The consequences of immigration policy in France, a look at history and today's Europe. The issue of immigration has been at the center of the political debate in France for decades. Immigration policies, especially during François Mitterrand's presidency, have been a subject of controversy. In this essay, we will examine the consequences of immigration policy in France, highlighting past mistakes and current implications, while putting the nation's and Europe's history into perspective. Past mistakes. When France accepted immigrants en masse without conducting thorough investigations into their origins, it took a significant risk. This was particularly evident during François Mitterrand's presidency. At that time, France opened its doors without considering the long-term consequences. Authorities did not adequately account for the need to integrate newcomers effectively or ensure their adherence to French Republican values. Historical example: the massive immigration from former colonies, such as Algeria, created tensions and integration problems in the French suburbs. The 2005 riots were a striking example of this. 2. Current consequences. Today, France is grappling with the repercussions of these past immigration policies. National security has become a major concern. Authorities are struggling to control extremism, terrorism, and insecurity, all of which are consequences of poorly planned immigration policies. Contemporary example: the terrorist attacks that have affected France in recent years have raised concerns about national security and highlighted deficiencies in the intelligence and surveillance system. 3. The role of Europe and Schengen. The Schengen Agreement, which established the free movement of people within the European Union, has been criticized for weakening border control. Some argue that Europe should have maintained stricter national borders to preserve security. Historical example: the 2015 refugee crisis revealed the limits of Schengen, with massive migration pressure on some European borders and disagreements between member states on how to handle the crisis. 4. Preserving national identity. Some countries, like the UK and Switzerland, have adopted more restrictive immigration policies to preserve their national identity. These countries have implemented stricter immigration controls, seen by some as a measure to preserve their cultural identity. Contemporary example: Brexit in the UK was partially motivated by concerns about immigration and the desire to control national borders. In conclusion, France faces significant challenges related to its past immigration policy. It is essential to acknowledge these mistakes and learn from history to shape more thoughtful immigration policies in the future. Europe must also strike a balance between free movement and national security. Preserving national identity is a complex challenge, and each country must decide on its path based on its values and priorities.
In the spirit of Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialist philosophy, we can reframe the essay with a focus on individual choice and responsibility, emphasizing the consequences of immigration policies in France as a reflection of the existentialist perspective. Title: The Weight of Immigration Policy in France, an Existentialist Inquiry. The issue of immigration in France unveils an existentialist quandary, one that forces us to confront the choices and responsibilities of the individual. In this essay, we will explore the consequences of immigration policy in France through the lens of existentialism, delving into the repercussions of past actions and their implications in the context of the nation's and Europe's history. Of freedom and responsibility. When France embraced a wave of immigrants without delving into their origins, it confronted the essence of existentialist freedom and responsibility. In doing so, France exposed itself to risks and uncertainties, echoing the existentialist theme that life is defined by one's choices, and those choices have far-reaching consequences. Historical example: the influx of immigrants from former colonies, like Algeria, exemplified the individual's quest for freedom but also revealed the challenges of accepting that freedom brings with it the responsibility to integrate and live according to one's chosen values. 2. The absurdity of the present. Today, France grapples with the absurdity of the consequences stemming from these past choices. The nation's security is challenged, and it is faced with the absurdity of dealing with extremism, terrorism, and insecurity that are, in part, the results of hasty immigration policies. Contemporary example: recent terrorist attacks in France emphasized the absurdity of life's uncertainties, where individuals act without reason, and the state must grapple with the randomness of violence and its consequences. 3. The existential dilemma of borders. The Schengen Agreement, which dissolved borders within the European Union, reflects an existential dilemma. It questions the very concept of borders and challenges the idea that nations should define their territories. This existential paradox places the responsibility for security not on external boundaries but on the individual. Historical example: the 2015 refugee crisis forced Europe into an existential crisis, raising questions about the responsibility of nations versus the individual in providing sanctuary and security. 4. Preserving authenticity. Certain nations, like the UK and Switzerland, have chosen to preserve their national identities through stricter immigration policies. Their actions mirror the existentialist quest for authenticity, the notion that individuals must define themselves by their actions and choices. Contemporary example: Brexit, driven by concerns about immigration, illustrates the existentialist imperative to assert one's identity and responsibility in the face of external forces. In conclusion, France's immigration policy quandary, through the existentialist perspective, calls us to recognize the choices we make and the responsibilities they entail. Existentialism reminds us that we are condemned to be free, that we must make choices, and those choices, be they in the realm of immigration policy or individual identity, and define who we are. In this existential drama, the preservation of national identity and security are choices made in the face of absurdity and uncertainty.